Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Legal Trends and Canadian Lawyers, using data to shape the future of legal in Canada. Now, as Mike mentioned, my name is Rio from Clio, and I'm the Affinity Program Coordinator. Now, for those of you who don't know, Clio is a tech company, and we make cloud-based legal solutions for lawyers and their law firms. Now, I've been at Clio for a year and a half, and my job as the Affinity Program Coordinator is to manage the 66 relationships that we have with law societies and bar associations across North America. So it's my job to manage those relationships, care for them, and make sure that they flourish. So for today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Clio and a report that we publish every year called the Legal Trends Report, or the LTR, as it's lovingly known in the office. And so we're going to talk, I'll introduce you to Clio, I'll introduce you to the LTR report, we will talk a little bit about, oh, wait a minute, sorry, my slides are not, that's not the right slide. Sorry guys, technical, give me 1 second here. Okay, yeah, there we go, perfect. Okay, so this is the slide that I should be on. So I'll introduce you a little bit to Clio and the Legal Trends Report. We will talk about why the Legal Trends Report and this kind of research is important. And then we'll go over some key insights from the 2016, 17, and 18 LTRs. And then we'll discuss the future of legal tech in Canada. And finally, we'll move on to a question and answer period, hopefully if I have time. Okay, so Clio was founded in 2008 in Powell River, British Columbia, by our CEO, Jack Newton, and Ryan Govro. And from the very beginning, we have been committed to sharing our knowledge with the legal community and improving and transforming the practice of law for good. Now, we were the very first cloud-based practice management solution ever, which is a really big deal, and a lot of people weren't really sure about us when we first started, but now it's been 10 years, and we have over 170,000 customers across Canada, the United States, the UK, and Europe. So we've grown a lot. Now, because we've always been committed to transforming the practice of law for good, that effort has taken on many forms. But in 2015, we recognized that there was a new opportunity for us to educate and transform the legal industry. So we realized that by sharing actionable data insights with small and solo firms, we could actually help them to build stronger practices and build a stronger, more innovative industry as a whole. And that's how the Legal Trends Report was born. So the Legal Trends Report, what is it? It is a report that we publish every year, and it talks about business operations, how small and solo firms run their practices. We look at workflows, are they efficient? We look at how many hours you're billing. We look at all different kind of things, like where is your time going? What are rural lawyers making versus urban lawyers? We look at everything. And so we gather all this data and we put it into a report and we publish it, and that is the LTR report. So why do we do it? Well, the first reason we do this is because as a tech company, we understand that the legal tech landscape is changing. It's moving fast. And small and solo firms are struggling to keep up to new innovations. And not only that, but small and solos are under immense pressure to cut costs, to improve efficiency, and to also at the same time offer better services to their clients who have come to expect to be delighted with every interaction they have. And you can thank Amazon for that. So we realized that what was actually missing was that lawyers really needed the right tools to be able to adapt and change to this new industry. So at Clio, we see data as a tool. This is another reason why we do the Legal Trends Report, because data is like a secret weapon. It's something that we use to inform our product decisions, to inform our business decisions, and to determine the best ways that we can help serve our customers and meet their needs. So prior to the Legal Trends Report, there was no data like this for small and solo firms. Nothing that talked about how firms were being run. There was data concerning the large 100+ user firms, but those are kind of few and far between, and that information isn't really relevant to small and solos. So we realized that by providing these insights into practices, we can assure that not only do small and solo lawyers have the tools to adapt to the changing legal industry, but they also have the ability to thrive. And that is especially important because they're facing competition from a new type of competitor. automated online legal services. Now, I know some of you have heard about this before. We talked about it yesterday in the panel. But what I really want to emphasize here is that the same type of technology that can help make small and solo firms more efficient and more successful can also be used to make small and solo lawyers obsolete and to remove them largely from the legal process. So recent developments in artificial technology and AI, or artificial intelligence and AI, are making it possible for machines to offer services in place of lawyers. Now, out of the US, one such company is called Weavorce. So they actually use AI to help guide couples through the divorce process. So AI conducts an interview with their clients, and their clients talk about their preferred outcome. And if a hard question comes up, only then does a human lawyer actually step in. That's kind of a game changer, right? I mean, think about that. You get a divorce, you don't even have to talk to a lawyer. You just online, couple clicks, you're done. Like, another company that offers online legal services is based out of Toronto. We have Blue Jay Legal. So these guys, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Blue Jay Legal. Now, they use AI to make predictions about case outcomes by analyzing data about previous cases. Loom, actually just in the entranceway there, does something very similar. Now, at the moment, this tool is designed to help lawyers. But with further development, it could actually replace lawyers largely by analyzing huge amounts of data in a matter of minutes to offer one-size-fits-all legal services to clients. Now, those are just a few examples, but AI is also being used to assist with class action lawsuits by doing client intake, to do due diligence, and to review and maintain contracts. Now, these companies, they are efficient, they're well-financed, they understand that technology and data are tools, and they're powerful tools. Not only that, but these companies are taking advantage of the gaps in legal services that small and solo firms are having trouble filling. And we'll talk more about those in a minute as we get into the LTR report. So that's why we do it. That's why we do the Legal Trends Report, because the industry is changing, and we want you to have the tools that you need to build a better future. So let's talk about the Legal Trends Report, and we'll discuss some of the insights that it's revealed. So when we started to compile these reports, the first thing we did was we gathered data. Lots and lots and lots of data. We need huge cohorts of data in order to be able to produce this report. And we get our data from 3 different sources. So the first is Clio data. Now, we have data contributed from over 70,000 Clio law firms. Now, this data is aggregated, it's anonymized, it is completely optional. Every firm, every user has the option to opt out. And most importantly, it is metadata. So there's no data from client files. We have absolutely no identifying information in there about anything to do with clients, anything that would identify individual firms. That's not what we use. We focus on data like how many hours are lawyers logging, how much are they collecting on their bills, things like that. We don't want to know about their clients. So another source is law firm surveys. We send out thousands of surveys to law firms that are both Clio customers and non-Clio customers. In addition, we do a general population survey. We do consumer surveys. We send out thousands of surveys to people who have either dealt with a legal problem in the last 2 years or have hired a lawyer in the last 2 years. So that's where we get all of our data from. So the first report we did was the 2016. And we took all of that information, we distilled it down, and we found some pretty startling things, actually. Now, I don't have time to cover everything in all of these reports with you, but I strongly suggest that you read them, and I'll provide some materials after this about where you can download them and where you can check them out for yourself. But for now, let's take a look at the most impactful revelations from the 2016 report. So the first thing that we did, that we noticed when we were trying to compile this data and to kind of find out how lawyers were running their firms, was we realized that there was no standard way to measure the success of law firms. There was basically no starting point. How do you define law firm success? How was this being measured? Well, we realized there was no tools to do that. So at Clio, we use something called key performance indicators, KPIs. And these are measurable values that we use to evaluate how effectively a business is meeting its goals. So generally, KPIs will focus on something that's central to how the business operates. So we decided that we were going to establish KPIs for the legal industry, and we focused on billable hours, right? That's pretty important. I mean, pays your bills. That's how firms make money. So we developed 3 KPIs that sought to find out how much time was actually being spent on billable tasks and how much of that time was being put onto bills and collected on. So we came up with the utilization rate, realization rate, and collection rate. Yeah. And now all 3 of them are very, very important, but today we're largely going to focus on the utilization rate, as that was the one that revealed the most startling insights into how much time and productivity was actually being lost in a single workday. So utilization rate seeks to answer the question, of your available workday hours, how many are billable? Now, in a perfect world, they would all be, right? Like ideally. And to find, but they're not. And so to find the utilization rate, we divide the number of billable hours in a workday by the number of available hours worked that day. Yep, there we go. Now, when we actually crunch these numbers, we find something very, very startling. So before I kind of tell you what that is, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Now, I know a lot of you have your own practices or have practiced in the past. Out of an 8-hour workday, how many hours a day do you guys think you actually spend on billable activities? Who wants to guess? 2? 2? Yeah? Pardon? Yeah, 5? Oh, 5? Okay. Yeah, so 2, 5, anybody else? 4? Yeah, okay. 4? Well, those are all really great. One of them is closer than the rest, and that would be 2. Yeah, exactly. I feel like someone here might have read the Legal Trends Report at some point in time. So yes, out of an 8-hour workday, an average of 2.4 hours are actually utilized or actually spent on billable time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is worked out on billable hours.
Yep.
How did you guys work in flat fees for people who do real estate bills? How are those working?
Oh, that's a good question. So this just focuses on like hourly rate. This doesn't consider flat fees. Okay. Yeah. So for an hourly billing, okay. So for hourly billing, of an 8-hour workday, an average of only 2.4 hours a day was utilized. That's like 5.6 hours that just aren't being utilized. That's an average of like 32 hours a week that are just missing. So not only that, but when you start to crunch the numbers and we look at realization rate, so how many of those hours actually made it onto a bill, we find that that number actually drops to 1.9. So lawyers tend to do things like offer discounts on certain services. They tend to undercut themselves and like cut down the hours that they're actually billing for even before those bills make it to the client. So when you look further into this and you consider collection rate, so how many hours did a lawyer actually collect of those 1.9 that were billed? 1.6. So really your like hourly lawyers are really only getting paid about 1.6 hours a day. That's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of missing time. That's a lot of missing money. And oh, do you guys have a question? No? Okay, great. All right. So naturally, when we discovered that there were 6 missing hours on average a day, we were like, yeah, let's dig deeper into that. Let's find out where those missing 6 hours are going. So for the 2017 report, we focused on that missing time and wanted to find out exactly what it was being spent on. What were lawyers doing in those 6 hours? So what we found is that 48% of that missing time was being spent on administrative tasks. So things like office admin, generating and sending bills, collections, all things that are essential to running a business, but ultimately do not generate revenue. So that's where 48% of that missing time was going. I mean, that's a big chunk. That's like, I'm doing some math in my head here. That's like 20 hours a week that you're missing, just being spent on stuff that could be automated and could be done more efficiently. So let's move on to the 2018 Legal Trends Report. Now, for this year, we expanded our purview. we decided that not only would we focus on lawyers, we would focus on lawyers' customers, legal consumers. And the intention of that was to try to build on the insights that we had gained from the first two LTR reports and offer broader coverage of the client's journey. So let's go over some key insights from this year's report. So now, because we were always seeking to understand how lawyers are running their firms, this year we decided that we were going to move beyond business operations, and we were going to look at what motivates lawyers. How do lawyers define success? And what we learned was that increasing firm revenue and improving efficiency was at the top of the list. These things are really, really important to small and solo lawyers. But surprisingly, there we go, at the bottom of the list, growing your client base and billing more hours were not the biggest priorities. Those were not definitions of success, which is kind of surprising because you would think that more clients and equals more revenue, right? More clients and more revenue equals success, but not necessarily. And so naturally that prompted us to do a bit more digging. And so we found that lawyers don't want more clients, they don't want to bill more hours because they're maxed out as it is. 70% of lawyers work outside of business hours to catch up on work. And not only that, but 58% believe that it's what's necessary to succeed. So these numbers tell us that working efficiently is a significant challenge for small and solo firms, and that though it may seem counterintuitive, more clients may not necessarily be the solution. So in our effort to kind of understand the relationship between law firms and how they are run and their clients, we took another look at those missing hours. Now, we talked about the 48% that were spent on administrative tasks. Well, there's another 33% that's actually being spent on business development, things like website development, marketing, corresponding with potential clients. All of these things taking up valuable time that could be used toward billable activities. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the client experience and some of the things that we uncovered around that. So do you remember earlier I talked about how online companies are taking advantage of this gap in legal services? Well, we kind of dug into that gap and we found that there's a gap between how lawyers perceive the delivery of legal services and how consumers expect those services to be delivered. Now, it's important that we understand what factors contribute to this gap so that we can help lawyers align themselves with the needs of their clients. And this is really important because it's going to help lawyers be more efficient and provide better service and ultimately be more competitive. So before I move on to the next slide, I just want to kind of ask, what emotions do you think a client experiences when they hire a lawyer? Does anyone want to guess? Euphoria. That's a good one. Anything else? Anyone else? Relief? Who said that? Ah, you. Yeah, I feel like you've done your homework, right? Yes, and she's absolutely right. So 51% of clients feel relief when they hire a lawyer. But it's interesting to note that only about 17% of lawyers actually perceive that relief. What a lot of lawyers perceive instead is confusion. They perceive their clients as being confused, when in reality, what most of their clients are feeling, aside from relief, is also frustration. They're frustrated. They're frustrated that they're in this situation. They are frustrated that maybe their lawyer isn't responding to them in a timely manner. They're frustrated maybe because they don't understand the case, they don't understand the expectations. And this is like a really, really good area. This relief and frustration is an excellent area where lawyers can improve their client experience. Because if you think about it, ideally, relief is what you want people to feel. You don't want them to feel frustrated. And this is something that those online services really understand. They want to eliminate all of that frustration, and they just want to focus on relief and happiness and making people feel like that was an easy process. And that is something that small and solo firms need to start focusing on and need to start changing. So what about the market for legal services? Now, we all know there's a market for legal services, right? And of the general population, about 59% say that they would consider using the law when faced with a legal problem. But on the other side of things, 50% of those people have also dealt with a life issue that could have been handled legally but wasn't. Now, doesn't that seem kind of curious? They would all consider using the law, but they ultimately didn't. So why is that? What is it that's holding them back? Well, when it comes down to it, consumers are concerned about things. Every consumer has concerns. And when consumers think about hiring a lawyer, they're mostly concerned about cost. Are the benefits worth the money? A lot of them don't think so. And although the benefits may justify the cost, they just feel that it's too much money. And overall, the cost isn't clear. These are things that people are concerned about. And this is a really good indication that lawyers need to be much more transparent and clear about the costs associated with the services they provide. And that, even in itself, that price transparency is just a little thing that can go a long way to improving client experience. Oh, okay. So what about the people who actually hire a lawyer? Because, yeah, we know that happens, right? People hire lawyers. So why do they ultimately decide to forego their concerns about cost and hire lawyers? Well, we got a three-way tie. So a lot of them didn't think they could handle their issue without a lawyer. It was clear that a lawyer would be beneficial to their case outcomes. And a lot of them thought that their issue was serious enough that they needed a lawyer. And so this is really interesting because it indicates that once customers and consumers buy into the idea of complexity, cost becomes a secondary concern. So this also highlights a sense of relief that a lot of people feel. They know that the problem is bigger than their capabilities, and they see that a lawyer is going to be beneficial. So again, if lawyers are able to communicate it with their clients in a way that communicates the complexity and the fact that they really need a professional to deal with this problem, then they're going to be better able to improve their client experience and overcome the concerns about cost. So, finally, as far as customers go, consumers who don't hire still inquire. Window shoppers. I'm sure you've all encountered window shoppers. And they show up and they kick the tires and they ask questions, but ultimately they don't want to hire a lawyer. And they end up wasting time. And this is a perfect example of a time when technology can be employed to increase efficiency. Using technology, using client intake relationship management software to screen people to separate out window shoppers from those who are actually serious about hiring a client. So, now that we kind of talked about consumers, legal consumers, what do they like, let's talk about how they feel about lawyers. How they feel about lawyers when they're hiring a lawyer. How they feel about their lawyer after they're done, after their case is done. And let's see how they feel about the legal industry as a whole. So, the first thing we found is that, like we all know, naturally it's very important to build a good reputation. And that is extra important for lawyers because word-of-mouth referrals have a significant impact on your firm. 62% of consumers will ask friends or families for recommendations when looking for a lawyer. So, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of business generated from people just talking about how great you are. But what if the services that a lawyer is providing are not that great? How is that lawyer going to know that they have things to improve on? How are they going to gain insight into what areas they could improve to, or they could change to improve that client experience? Well, feedback. Feedback's a great thing. At Clio, we use feedback all the time. We love it. We use it to know where we're falling short and use it to improve ourselves all the time. Now, lawyers, on the other hand, don't generally collect client feedback. That's really not something that a lot of them do. 37%, in fact, just don't collect any kind of feedback. And maybe they just don't want to know. Maybe it's because they don't realize that they should be. Who knows? There's lots of reasons, but a lot of them don't. What's more is that of the people who actually do collect feedback, about 47% collect it casually or informally in person. Now, it's good that they're trying. I mean, that's great. You're trying to collect feedback. That's a great starting point. But the thing is that when you ask for feedback in person, what happens is that that person's response is skewed by social desirability bias. That person is telling you what they think you want to hear. They're saying, oh yeah, Jim, that was great, you were fantastic. But what they might be thinking is, hey, you could have responded to my emails a little bit faster. Feedback that that lawyer could have used to improve their client experience, but that they missed out on because they're not using the right tools to collect feedback. So what kind of tools can we use to collect feedback? Well, something else that we love at Clio is something called Net Promoter Score. Has anyone ever heard of this? Nobody? Wow, okay, cool, that's fine, that's good, then you're gonna learn something new. So Net Promoter Score, or NPS, is one of the most accurate and convenient ways of measuring customer sentiment. So Net Promoter Score is calculated on responses to a single question. How likely is it that you would recommend our company or our service or a law firm to a friend or colleague? Now, answers are based on a score of 0 to 10. 0 to 6, those are your detractors. They don't like you. They're not telling anybody to come back to you. 7s and 8s, those are your passives. Yeah, they might come back. They might not. Meh, who knows? And then 9s and 10s, those are your promoters. They love you. They're going to tell everybody that you are the best lawyer ever and to come on down to your office. So to calculate your actual NPS score, what we do is we subtract the percentage of detractors, so all those people who answered a 0 to 6 to that one question, we subtract that number from the percentage of people who are your promoters. And then your score is scored on a scale of -100 to 100, okay? And anything over 0 is considered okay. Anything over 50, that's excellent. And anything over 75, woo, that's exceptional. And not that common, I will say. So how do we think the legal industry measures up? What do we think is the legal industry's Net Promoter Score? And I'll give you a hint, it's between 0 and 100. There's no negative there. Anyone want to guess? Anyone want to guess? 10? Wow. 20? 30? Anyone else? Okay, well, 10's a bit low. 25. 25 is Net Promoter Score. Now, that's pretty good, right? That's over 0. It's not a 50, but it's not the worst. But it definitely suggests that there might be a little bit of room for improvement. So it's one thing to find out your NPS score, but you also have to look at the factors that contribute to that score. So, well, first, actually, let's look at how the law firms compare to other firms, actually, or to other sectors. So law firms are on par with airlines, banks, wireless carriers, and credit card companies. Oh, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. So, I mean, you know, maybe you decide for yourselves if those are the kind of guys you want to keep company with, right? So what about the factors that influence NPS? What about the things that make people give the legal industry a score of 25? Well, at the top of the list, we have, again, perceived cost of services, okay? But the next 3 are ease of understanding case expectations, bedside manner and personality, and responsiveness to calls and emails. Now, when you add up those bottom 3, they greatly outweigh cost concerns, and they have a greater impact on client feedback. So when you see those 3 options, those are perfect places to improve on client experience, to give your clients a little bit of face time, to find a way to use technology to be more responsive to emails and calls. Little things that are really going to help up that score. So now that we talked about NPS, let's talk about client expectations and meeting client expectations. Now, as we saw, I mean, score of 25, maybe there are some things in here that can be improved on. So a central theme to this year's report was the perceptions that clients have about their, the perceptions that lawyers have about their clients' needs, and how those perceptions are not necessarily reflective of reality. So we're only going to walk through a couple of these because we are running short of time. So I'm going to talk about the most important. So when it comes to making appointments, a lot of lawyers, 47%, expect that their customers want to do that over the phone, whereas over email, whereas 59% actually of their customers actually want to do that over the phone. So, I mean, that's a pretty big gap, right? When it comes to telling a lawyer the facts and details of a situation, 51% of lawyers perceive that their clients want to do that over email, whereas a whopping 70% of consumers want to do that in person. And we understand why lawyers may not want to do that in person. It can be emotional. It's hard to bill for that time. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to avoid that situation, but at the same time, this is a perfect place to improve on the client experience. By offering a little bit of bedside manner, a little bit of personality and connection and building a relationship with a client, you're going to increase their overall satisfaction. Not only that, but that's 70% of people that actually want to see you and want to spend time with you. And they might be willing to pay for that time. So think about that. So finally, we've got making payments. Now, this one is kind of interesting because 57% of lawyers perceive that their clients want to make payments in person. And they're kind of aligned. 39% of consumers actually want to do that in person. But, interestingly, we've got 31% of consumers who want to make payments online, and not a single lawyer perceives that. So, again, definitely something that's not only going to help improve client experience by making it easier for your clients to pay, but you're also going to get paid faster if it's easier for them to pay. So, to kind of wrap up the insights from the 2018 report, overall, when it comes to client expectations, they expect lawyers to be available outside of their office. They've got some pretty high expectations, I have to say. Not only that, but they expect lawyers to be available outside of business hours. Now, that's a lot to ask of anybody in any profession. But this is also a really great place where technology can be hugely beneficial. You can use technology, things like virtual receptionists, to help give the appearance of availability when you're actually not there. So finally, a good thing to take away from this is that client perceptions are changing. None of the things that we just talked about are set in stone. It's a constantly evolving, changing landscape of different expectations. But it's interesting to note that people who have worked with a lawyer in the last 2 years are much more open to using technology when dealing with a lawyer again. So, for example, say you have a virtual receptionist. They're much more likely to be okay with that. Say you use AI to kind of answer questions and do some client intake. Yeah, they're more than happy to talk to a computer a little bit if that makes their process with you simpler. And it's interesting to note as well that people who prefer not to hire lawyers are open to alternative formats of legal services. So do you remember yesterday in the panel, it was Amy who talked about in Russia they have like a call-in legal service? People who have never dealt with a lawyer, who don't like hiring lawyers, are much more open to different ways of dealing with lawyers. So when you think creatively, think outside the box, small and solo firms can really get a leg up on the online competition. So that wraps up the legal trends reports. There's some really great stuff in there, as I mentioned before. Definitely worth a read, okay? Take the time to read them. They're really, really interesting. And I will tell you after this presentation where you can go to download them. So now I mentioned previously that we need a huge set of data in order to do this, report, and that's why all of the information in it is specific to the United States. Now, we really, really, really want to be able to provide these kind of insights for Canadian lawyers. But the fact is that we just don't have the data. We don't have enough people using this kind of technology, using practice management software that would allow us to kind of come up with these kinds of insights. So we're really hoping that that would change because it could be very valuable and kind of a game changer for the Canadian legal industry. So why is it that we don't have this kind of data in Canada? Well, there's a couple reasons. So the first thing is that problem of adoption. Okay, we see that a lot of lawyers, despite new and exciting technologies, are pretty weary of them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's so many different options out there. There's so much information, it's really hard to know where to start. And not only that, but a lot of lawyers are still comfortable using increasingly outmoded methods and processes. And even firms that are willing to introduce new technologies, they have a really hard time sometimes convincing their lawyers to use those new technologies. And this isn't helped by the assumption that a lot of law schools make around young lawyers. They tend to assume that young lawyers, because of their age, they must already know about technology. They must already know how to use these things. But the fact is that a lot of them don't. And as a result, a lot of law schools are actually not implementing valuable tech training for students, tech training that could really help to boost the rate of adoption in Canada. So what else? Why else do we not have as many lawyers using technological tools in Canada? Well, aside from slow adoption, the fact is that the law relies heavily on ethical guidelines and regulations to govern its operations. I mean, you all know that, right? You have a set of standards that you have to follow. But the fact is that the most influential sources of these guidelines, like the law societies, have been pretty slow to provide any kind of guidance about ethical and responsible use of tech. And it's not like that in the US. So in 2012, the ABA added a duty of technological competence. And as of yesterday, Colin informed me, it's not 36 states, it's 37 states have actually adopted this duty of tech competence. And that goes a long way by giving their approval of using tech competency and saying, hey, like, you have a duty to keep up with this stuff. You have a duty to be competent as far as technology goes, as far as these tools goes. That goes a long way to helping lawyers adopt new technologies. Now, in Canada, we're getting there. We're definitely working towards this, but we're not quite there yet. In 2008, the CBA published their guidelines for practicing ethically with new information technologies. That's a really great document. It's fantastic. But it hasn't been updated in a long time, and it doesn't talk about cloud-based software, which, as we all know, is a thing now we need to know about. But it was a step in the right direction. And in 2013, they launched their Legal Futures Initiative, which focuses on analyzing the nature and extent and the consequences of future of legal services in Canada. Not only that, but they provide a framework for ideas and approaches and tools to assist the legal profession in adopting change, which is awesome. Like, definitely a great resource to check out. But again, not full guidelines. So in 2017, the Federation of Law Societies of Canada proposed the addition of a duty of tech competence to their Model Code of Professional Conduct. Unfortunately, as of 2019, those proposed changes have not yet been amended. So again, a great step, and we're getting there. We're so close. But what we really need is kind of a unified effort, a unified guiding light to tell lawyers that it's okay, and not only is it okay to adopt technology, but it's expected. So because there aren't really any national guidelines, that's left a lot of the provinces to kind of come up with their own guidelines. So in BC, we've got the Cloud Computing Due Diligence Guidelines. Fabulous tool, absolutely great information, definitely something that the entire country needs. And closer to home here, we've got the Law Society of Ontario. They have their Technological Practice Management Guidelines. Again, fabulous resource, but something that the entire country needs. Now, ultimately, with the right regulation, the right guidance, the Canadian legal sector is definitely going to be able to remain competitive and innovative. But without that guidance, we're at risk of losing a lot of business and a lot of small firms to online legal providers. So let's talk about some key takeaways, some key lessons from this presentation. Now, I really want to see Canadian lawyers leading the charge for legal innovation. I want them to be, and I want to be able to stand up here and say, hey, we have some great insights for Canadian lawyers. And I truly believe that by working together and keeping an open mind, that's not far off. So these are the things that I want you to think about when you leave this room. The first, change is here to stay. Yay. Awesome. So change does not have to be scary. We have a lot of work to do. But by changing the way that we view the legal industry and the legal tech industry, we're going to set ourselves up for success. And by using the right tools and finding the right support, we're going to have a great journey toward embracing the future with technology, and that can be an exciting experience. So I've got some homework for you guys. When you leave this room, when you leave here today, I want you to do a couple things. The first is read the legal trends reports. I know, I keep saying that, but there's obviously some people in here who have already done it, and you know how fantastic they are. And yes, they have information that's pertinent to the United States market, but at the same time, it has a lot of really, really practical information in there that can be applied to small and solo lawyers everywhere. So out on my table, just outside, I've got a stack of materials, like a paper that's got all of the places that you can go, where you can go to download the legal trends reports, and a whole bunch of other resources. Grab one. They're definitely worth the read. So the second, do your research and ask questions. It is the responsibility of every individual to educate themselves, to learn about new technologies, and to do the research. It's not just going to come to you. This knowledge isn't just going to show up in your brain one day. You have to seek it out. You have to find out what's available. Not only that, but you've got to ask questions. If you don't know, ask. That's the best way to find out. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Except maybe, is there air conditioning outside? I've had that one before. No, there is not. So ask questions. Again, on the materials outside, there's an incredible list of resources where you can go to find forums that are specifically for lawyers who are trying to learn about tech. You can go to find information about new and emerging technologies. Lots of great resources. Check them out. So third, get the conversation started. You guys are in the perfect position to get this revolution going, okay? When you're talking to your members, ask them, what are you doing? What kind of technology are you using? Are you using practice management technology? Are you thinking about your client experience? Are you thinking about how you can run your practice more efficiently? Find out what they're doing and talk to them about it. Share the information, share everything that you learned when you were doing your research. And finally, keep an open mind. Change is coming, and it doesn't have to be scary and uncomfortable. If you're open to it, there's an incredible array of possibilities and opportunities that can happen as a result of embracing change and just running with it.